Annalisa Six here with the January 2023 horoscope for the zodiac sign of Cancer, sun and rising sign. Cancer, this Mars Gemini transit that's been going on since October, the retrograde since October, has been very difficult for you. And fortunately for you, you're starting to get to the tail end. The area of the horoscope that this is hitting for the sign of Cancer is in a position that has to do with our subconscious and also the way that we deal with feelings of anger. Cancer, I've known a lot of Cancers that I feel like are pretty good at expressing their anger, but it can be very, very emotional. Obviously, you're an emotional sign, you're a water sign, so you rule, you're part of ruling the emotional realm. You're also ruled by the planet that is not a planet, the moon. The moon is your ruler, and so the moon also has to do with our emotions. So you're feeling centered. But I think one of the things about Cancer that is sometimes hard is that because you're a very emotional sign, sometimes knowing how to be confrontational or communicate your anger can be difficult. And so since Mars has been in Gemini, it's actually been kind of a theme for you to deal with repressed feelings of anger and how you emotionally release it and process it in a healthy way. This has been a theme for you since August. Mars station retrograde at the end of October. You've been having to really go through that during this retrograde period. And the first part of January, we're having the last little bit of Mars retrograde in Gemini, hitting that area that has a lot to do with repressed anger or feelings of buried resentment, potentially. And so when Mars stations direct, it's going to continue to move through that area and through Gemini, and then it's going to actually enter your sign in March. And so we still have quite a ways to go with Mars in Gemini, but at least for the first part of January, you're kind of in that last little part of reflect and review. And then by the time that Mars stations direct, which is around January 12th, it's really going to be time for you to take action when it comes to your own healing journey and finding positive ways to start working on confronting some of the things that you've been in this reflect and review period with. Another aspect of January where this is getting piggybacked upon is the fact that we are starting the year out with Mercury retrograde in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign that opposes Cancer. So in astrology, all the signs have oppositions with other signs. And so Cancer and Capricorn are the two opposing energies. And it's really common for Cancer and Capricorn people to find each other, or for even them to have a lot of those planets, like certain things in their charts will show those energies. And so if you're predominantly Cancer and Mercury is in your opposing sign of Capricorn, that can also feel kind of hard because it's pulling you into what feels like stuff that you're naturally opposing. But if you have Capricorn placements, while it can still be difficult to have those internal energies, you might be a little bit more balanced in the opposition versus feeling like it's totally hitting you in a negative way. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it does. But essentially what I'm trying to say is that because Mercury in Capricorn is retrograde in opposition to your sun or rising sign, you're being pulled into this opposite energy that's outside of your inherent nature, which can feel more difficult than it can be for others. Capricorn, it rules all the opposite things that Cancer rules. And so Cancer has to do with emotions, nurturing those emotions. Oftentimes it's connected to the mother because the mother is the vessel in which we are gestating in, where we start, that's where we begin to learn emotion and feel, is in the womb. And when we're born, that's usually the primary person that is caregiving to us. Obviously in this day and age, that's not always inherently true, but that's essentially what Cancer has to do with, is that internal nurturing. And as we get older, we have to learn how to do that for ourselves. And the Cancer dominant person is the person that tends to kind of rule at that. And so often Cancers look to mother other people, whether they're in a female or male or non-binary form or not. It's just that archetype that you're kind of always the person that other people need, but you also put a lot of stock on being the person that other people need. And a lot of times that repressed anger or resentment comes from giving to people who don't deserve it. And so that could be some of those themes that you've been working through that are coming up that you're going to be really facing. Now, Mercury in Capricorn Capricorn energy is the opposite of Cancer. So it's not about feelings. It's very different than that. Capricorn people tend to seem emotionless. A lot of people have a hard time with Capricorns because they seem so pragmatic and straightforward that it comes off in a very cold or dry way. Couldn't be further from the truth. Capricorn people are super emotional, very sensitive, but they like to seem strong. And Cancer also likes to seem strong. They're just a little bit more hard on the sleeve and willing to share emotion. So Capricorn often needs to learn from Cancer how to be more feeling centered and share vulnerability. But Cancer often needs to learn how to be less like that. They need to learn how to be more grounded, more straightforward, less feeling centered. It doesn't need to always be about your feelings. Sometimes you can talk about your feelings without crying. Crazy, I know, but that's Capricorn. And so Mercury in Capricorn could be a lot of that for you, of learning, how do I confront my feelings and talk about them? It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel my feelings. It's okay to be vulnerable. But when I need to be more straightforward and more pragmatic and practical, how do I make myself more Capricornian and less Cancerian when it doesn't suit me, right? There's a time and a place for all of it. And so Mercury retrograde in Capricorn is hitting the area of the horoscope that has a lot to do with being more practical and pragmatic in relationships and how you communicate in relationships, especially around shared resources, around your sexuality, around your sexual needs, around your financial needs, and also just how you relate to others in those ways. And so that's something that has been brewing in December. And then we had Mercury station retrograde on December 29th in Capricorn at 24 degrees. And it's going to be retrograde until the middle of January, where it doesn't station direct until around January 18th, 19th. The ephemeris, I can't always have exact dates that are relevant to our time zone. So I use that. That's why it's a little bit of like, give a couple hours or a couple days, because I'm not using the exact delineation. I have the book for the exact delineation, but I also don't know if people from other parts of the world are going to be listening to this. So I'm trying to keep it a little bit more neutral in that way. I'm Pacific time zone personally. But we also have a shadow period with Mercury. So once Mercury stations direct, there's about a 10-day shadow period where we're still feeling the effects of the Mercury retrograde. And sometimes the shadow period is harder for water-centered people. So if you have your water sun, rising, or moon, you tend to be more sensitive to the shadow periods. And so for you, you might really be feeling it for the whole month of January. Mercury is not going to leave Capricorn until February. So you're still going to be kind of under this influence of learning how to have more straightforward and practical communication. Pragmatic, practical communication sometimes comes off very cold. It's not always taking feelings of other people or yourself into account. I'm not saying that that's the way you should communicate. I don't abide by that. I think that we should be thinking about others and exercising empathy. But I also think there's a time and a place to keep things in a Capricornian straightforward way. So that's a big theme for Cancer this month, specifically in your relationships too. Once Mars and Mercury are direct, you're going to start feeling a little bit more momentum towards seeing that payoff, especially the Mars stationing direct, because we've been under that for a long time. Jupiter is also going to be passing through the first 5 degrees of Aries for the entire month of January. And where that is hitting for the Cancer chart has a lot to do with how you are out in the world. So in your group life, but also kind of your career. It's kind of influencing the tail end of that house that has to do with career, but also kind of moving towards your social circles. And Jupiter is a great energy. It's really great for, kind of elevating and evolving within your career and the things that you're doing out in the world. And in Aries, it promotes a lot of confidence. Cancer and Aries are hard aspected in astrology. They have what's called a square. There can be challenges and tension between those two energies. So if you're feeling tension around trying to elevate yourself, that's not going to be surprising, considering that, it's Capricorn and Aries both are, either Capricorn's opposing, Aries is squaring. They're tense energies. And so you're going to feel tension, but again, that pressure is what creates diamonds, and it might have a little bit of this ramped up, like, I'm ready for this energy. But again, when we have kind of the start of the year with some of these retrogrades, it doesn't feel great. It feels very much like that momentum we're trying to push through keeps getting stifled by these unforeseen things that keep happening. So I've been advising everybody to slow your roll at the start of January and wait until February to really start pushing for the goal, because we're just more energetically supported. Venus is also going to be entering Aquarius the 3rd day of January, and it's going to be going all the way through Aquarius and then ending the month in Pisces. And so that's a really positive energy for all of us. Aquarius rules the 11th house. That has to do with our community and how we are kind of navigating our social circles and the groups that we associate with. Where it hits in the Cancer chart has more to do with education and learning and our values and belief systems. And so for you, this is a really positive time for you to learn something new, or even disseminate something that you've learned, and to be around other people doing the same thing. And so if you feel really called to focus on your spirituality or your beliefs or learn something new, you're really supported in that in the month of January. So if you're signing up for any classes and programs in any kind of way, that's super supported. And if you're teaching anything like that, that's also very supported. It's a really good time for that. Just be aware Mercury's still retrograde those first 3 weeks. And so if you're doing Zoom classes, online classes, anything like that, there's probably going to be some hiccups with those things. So just be aware of that. But you are supported in education and learning things. Uranus is going to station direct the 4th week of January. And it's been retrograde in Taurus. And so that's actually going to be really positive for you. Kind of also having some breakthroughs. I've been kind of calling the end of January a breakthrough end of the month, where we start kind of having more insights towards what changes we really need to implement in our lives. And that's happening during Aquarius season. And Aquarius is all about, moving things forward and kind of innovating the way that we've been doing things and building upon things in a better way. If you watch any of the other videos, you'll see me talking a lot about that. So I'm repeating a lot of that, but that's the big theme when we move into Aquarius season. And again, where Aquarius is hitting in the horoscope for Cancer Sun rising, another really good time to be evaluating your belief systems and whether or not you're in alignment with that. Maybe your belief systems and your values are changing. Also a really good time for learning, and opening yourself up to different modalities of ways of doing things that you maybe in the past didn't think about. Let's get into the moons and where those are hitting for you. So we actually have a moon in your sign on January 6th. So at the beginning of the month, we have a full moon at 16 degrees Cancer. And full moons have a lot to do with manifestation, but also letting go of things that we no longer want. And I think that specifically for you, Cancer, this is a really positive time for you to be thinking about what you don't want to bring with you into 2023, specifically around a lot of those resentments or repressed anger from 2022 that you maybe have been working through. And so also too, with the Mercury retrograde, kind of, hovering in this general area, Mercury retrograde is actually going to be a pretty big player in this full moon. It's going to be opposite this full moon. And so those same kind of communication dynamics that I was talking about, where we're evaluating, how can I speak in a more straightforward, pragmatic way? How can I see things more in this structured way versus getting too feeling centered? We're finding a balance with that again, because we don't want to become overly pragmatic and practical to the point where we cut off our feelings. We still want to bring feelings into it. Feelings are important. So finding that balance is important. And I think that where the Mars retrograde is specifically hitting for Cancer, part of that is communicating when you're upset and knowing how to communicate when you're upset in a way that doesn't have to blow things up or be overly emotional. So that's something too. I don't perceive Cancer as a sign that blows things up, but I do perceive Cancer as a sign that when repressed, gets overly emotional in a way that sometimes is a lot for other people. And if you have a lot of other people in your life that don't process emotions that way, it can blow up. I've known a lot of Cancers, and when they get emotional, it's a lot. It is, and it's not a bad thing, but sometimes it's like, finding that middle ground of how do I process this with others in a way where everybody can kind of feel too. I think one of the things that I've noticed about the way Cancer expresses feelings is sometimes the feelings are so big that the other person's feelings are not always acknowledged. And by the time Cancer is expressing their feelings, it's hard for them to see the other person, even though Cancer is super empathic and usually always thinking about others. But Cancer being cardinal water, it's actually, out of all the water signs, the more self-focused water sign. So that's something too to kind of think about is when I'm having those communication dynamics, how do I make sure that the other person is getting equal airtime for their feelings too? So that might be something that comes up during the full moon. Self-care is really positive during a Cancer full moon, and kind of hunkering in, especially because it's opposite Mercury retrograde. It's probably not a good time to try to talk anything out, but it might be the perfect time. Sometimes those things are cosmically aligned and it just comes out, it just happens. Later in the month, on January 21st, we have our new moon at 1 degree Aquarius. So again, this is hitting the area of the Cancer chart that has to do with belief systems and values and things like that. In Placidus, it's still influencing an area that has a lot to do with how we're connecting with others around shared resources and our sexual identity. So it just depends kind of on which house system you're using. But this is a really good time for you to set intentions around those themes. So around your higher self and kind of like what you want to call in when it comes to your values, and whatever change that you want to implement in the new year. This new moon on January 21st is a good time to set those intentions. Aquarius has a lot to do with those progressive changes that we want to make in our life. Aquarius too, when it's partially in an area of the chart that has to do with relationship and sexuality, we also might be inclined to wanting to try out new things when it comes to our sexuality, or we might be feeling like we want to have more of a progressive view on relationship. And that could also have to do with some of those values and beliefs, kind of that you're reflecting upon. So you might be feeling more inclined to think about what you want in that way during the end of January as well. That is a pretty clear breakdown, I think, of some of the general themes that the Cancer rising sun individual is going to be encountering for the month of January. Good luck. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to cry. Just sometimes we got to do that in private and then talk about it when we've calmed down. So that could be a theme for you this month. All right, good luck.